Good evening and welcome to another week of Mindful Conversations. I am Dr. Lori Monaco with Align Yourself, Inc. I am a life coach specializing in transformation and mindfulness practice. I am a speaker and I'm also a holistic practitioner, and I'm known as the Badass Buddha. And Mindful Conversations allows me or gives me the chance to interview very amazing individuals, and we talk about life, we talk about mindfulness practice, we talk about self-care, we talk about balance and boundaries and grounding, and we talk about their story, and they get to share about their insight and what they've learned over the years and share it with you so that you can be an amazing version of yourself, the you that's always been there and meant to come out and always be as authentic as possible, which is perfect considering that the title of tonight's conversation is Gentle Insistence, Liberate Your Highest Expression and Embrace Your Most Authentic Self, with my lovely, lovely guest tonight. This is Mirjam Paninski. She is this beautiful, compassionate, intelligent, and strong woman you're going to get to know this evening. And I'm going to share with you what she sent me about herself. So she wrote to me in regards to what to talk about. I'll share a few lines here of what I do with my research and how it has led me to explore and embrace life coaching and healing. First of all, there is the part of my own traumatic past and childhood, which made me go on my own journey of healing with different means like therapy, meditation, acupuncture, yoga, etc. Even though I grew up meditating in ashrams around the world, which we hope to hear all about tonight, Mirjam. I went through my share of complex trauma and depression after emotional abuse, physical violence, and abandonment. I am very open about this. For my PhD, I work on the disconnection of body and mind, as well as the pathologizing, can't speak this evening, and staging of the body during pregnancy and birth through the medical apparatus. My focus is on racism and mortality and difference in treatment of Black women in particular, but any person of color really. My question is always, how can I give back? And is this project an ongoing questioning of my own positionality as a white European woman? I've spoken to a ton of women, as well as members of Black doula networks, midwives, doctors, etc., and those conversations have been such a gift for me, but I also saw that I had something to give. I was always drawn to becoming a counselor or therapist, but after grad school and with 2 kids, another 5 years of academia were clearly not healthy choices for me. I opened myself into life coaching, and especially my training as an EFT practitioner has opened paths to really work on core issues with my clients. I have expanded my practice to all women, as specifically to women in life transition. I have a background as an artist and musician, and while I had detached that part of me from my academic side, I have recently managed to merge those aspects and put some sound art installations in correlation with my research. So that'll be very interesting to talk about as well. I am also planning a podcast, as I found this medium appropriate to give the people I talked to for my research some space to share their insights and stories. Mirjam, welcome. I'm so glad you were.
Thank you so much
for being here. And I totally botched the bio because I apparently can't read. So you wrote everything correctly. I just can't seem to read properly. So I hope I didn't take away from that as a result. But I'm so happy that you are here because the insight that I'm so excited that you're going to share with everybody this evening has a lot to do with your story, your journey. It has a lot to do with you being a mom, you recognizing and becoming aware of certain things, certain inequalities, focusing your PhD research on that. And I think it's a really great conversation, especially now with people coming to terms with the fact that there continues to be a lot of inequality in so many ways. And rather than staying shut or pretending that it doesn't exist, now we're sort of really getting, headfirst into it. And so first off, how are you? How have you been dealing with all this pandemic stuff, going to school, 2 kids, home, how have you been doing with all that?
I'm very well. Thank you so much, Lori, for talking to me today and for this opportunity and for sharing some stuff. It's super exciting. I'm well. We are here. My husband and I are both at home with two little kids in grad school and PhD programs, and it's been good. We've really tried. I mean, as good as it can be, I suppose. We've really tried to keep our balance, for both of us to have time for ourselves, to work, and then time with the kids, a lot of time outside in nature. That's very important to all of us, and especially for our kids. If you don't want them to go up the wall, you need to get them running outside for a decent amount of time.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's good. It's definitely, we all have challenging days, some more, some less, but all in all, I think we've been dealing it with it pretty well.
Yeah, because that's a lot. Like, how your children are how old again?
My son just turned 3, and my daughter is 5. She'll be 6 in November.
So those are very active ages, and
yeah.
You and your husband are working on your PhDs, which
yes,
anybody's ever been in a PhD program, it is really, really hard. I laugh because I have my doctorate through a professional school, and I laugh because I say to myself, I think my school was probably easier than a PhD program because of the hoops and the red tape sometimes that comes with it, and the challenge you have, and so many different elements play into you working towards that PhD. So really, this is very impressive that 2 little kids, both of you guys working on this at the same time. So that leads me to our first question, because you started to talk about balance, and you are great about this because you have such great information to share and things that you've learned over the years. So you are a mother of 2 little ones, a wife, you are currently working on your PhD. You're also going, in the midst of all this, folks, she decided to go for life coaching training and to become an EFT therapist. And you are also teaching and researching as part of your PhD studies. What do you do to ground yourself, create balance, and practice self-care?
That's a good question. So first of all, as you said, like a PhD or grad school is really it's not really cut out to have kids. I mean, we're trying. Us parents are really all parents I know here in grad school at Brown. We really try to push this as hard as possible to make this a family-friendly place, but it really, we're struggling. It's not, or they're struggling with us. But really, and a lot of people ask us, how do you do it? I can't do this without kids. How do you do it with kids? But really, the kids keep us grounded in all of this, because in the humanities, especially, you tend to lose kind of the ground under your feet sometimes. And to have 2 little kids at home with their needs and joy and tantrums and all that comes with it, and the cooking, the cleaning, the going to bed at night, that's a major grounding within this research world. And as when you ask me what keeps me balanced and grounded is when I have me time, alone time, how as little as this can be, I really try to make the most, even if it's just 10 minutes. So meditation is a big part of me, but also, this is a time issue, but really if I have like as little as 5 minutes, this can transform my whole internal, external systems. So definitely that's something. And of course, I'm training to be an EFT practitioner, and that's something I use a lot. So if in case I'm triggered or stressed, I immediately tap myself. It's like in EFT, you tap acupressure points while you expose yourself to a negative emotion to de-stress that negative emotion, to kind of cut the bond between the emotion and the stress of it. So that's what I do. What I do a lot. And also I really, the whole work and practice I do as a life coach and EFT training and practicing EFT and the meditation, in contrast to what I do at Brown sometimes, or what I have to deliver for grad school, is really itself really fulfilling and balancing to me, I must say. So it really gives me so much energy. I couldn't have believed it when I first thought about doing something additionally to my PhD, but it's really been so fulfilling and so eye-opening, and all the conversations I have also with you, you know, as a coach, have just been nothing but gifts, you know. So
well, and I think the important thing here is to know that, you know, you added more stuff to what you already had, a very full plate. But when you do something that you resonate with, and it brings out the best of you, so even though you're training to help other people, it's you're learning about yourself as you go. So the life coaching training is teaching you about yourself. The EFT training is teaching you about yourself. It's giving you skill sets or tools and to help other people, but it's helping you as well. And I think a lot of people don't think of it that way. They think, oh my God, you're doing a PhD, and then you're going back to school and you're doing training in this and this. And it's like, it's overwhelming. But the other little thing that you said was 5 minutes. If you just give yourself 5 minutes, and sometimes you need more than 5, but just knowing that you say to yourself, 5 minutes is today I have 5 minutes, I'm going to take 5 minutes, as opposed to sometimes, especially women, we have a tendency to just keep going. Oh no, I don't have time. Oh, I don't have time. I've got to take care of my kids. I've got to take care of this. I got to take care of that. And we don't give ourselves even that 5 minutes, because we'll say, I don't have time, or it's just 5 minutes. It's not going to do anything. And then put it off. And then next thing you know, days go by, and then we burn out. And then we hit this really like low point. So I think it's beautiful that you say how what you're learning is also part of your self-care, as opposed to separating and saying, I have to find the self-care. And I teach that a lot. I mean, not that I teach that a lot, I say this during my conversations, during mindful conversations, is that you define your self-care as what you want it to be, what works for you, because what works for you for self-care may not work for other people. Like you playing with your kids is a piece of self-care, just taking that time with them, giving them that space, taking away from what you're working on and being silly with them, getting outside, watching them run around. That's very glorifying to some people. And then, but other people, they're like, I can't be around my kids. They drive me crazy. And that's okay.
And it also varies. It varies some days,
yes.
You know?
Yes.
You know, some days you think, you know, all I want to do is run around at the playground with them. And some days you just think, please just,
go play.
I can't wait for these 2 hours to be over and for me to kind of just shut the door, just even for a few minutes, you know, but that's parenthood, and that's,
well, it's parenthood, but it's also mindful practice, because it's an awareness.
Yeah.
It's being, again, you know, you wanted to talk about embracing your most authentic self, which we're going to get more detail about shortly. But it's like owning that and being honest with yourself to say, you know, sometimes, and listen, I love being a parent, but sometimes, you know, I need to, you know, I want to do my own thing, and then there's other times where it's just the most precious moments, you know, that you're there. So being aware of that is very cleansing. It's very healthy, and it helps you balance, because you know what you should or shouldn't do, or not using should, but can or can't do, or, you know, need to do. So yes,
for women and mothers, I think this is a thing. When we feel that, you know, we often tend to feel guilty or shame, and I think that is a challenge and a training for all of us to embrace that part of yourself even more, to love that part of yourself even more when it comes up, you know, to not suppress it. And I think that's what I also love about EFT, is that it takes these emotions so serious, but that doesn't mean that we have to, you know, lash out or kind of expose these emotions to everyone. If we take that seriously, it's actually that's the opposite. That's like you taking care of them, taking them serious, and, you know, being able to release, transform them, transmute them, let them become something powerful, you know, not, that's what I've really appreciated so much about the work with EFT.
Right.
And that's what I also do when I sometimes, when I do 5 things at the same time, and then it's my 3-year-old saying milk now, not in 2 minutes. And there's no way of saying, hey, just give me 2 minutes, let me finish this. No, we're gonna scream at the top of our lungs within 10 seconds. And you feel yourself boiling up inside,
Mm-hmm.
and it, not that it always works, but sometimes I just tap a few points on that overwhelm that I feel at that time, just that rage that I feel sometimes when I feel like I can't, like, where am I gonna go? But that has really transformed a lot of moments for me.
That's great. That's absolutely wonderful. It's important to find what works for you, and then share it. You're learning, you're going to teach people how to do this, and it's going to be absolutely fabulous. So tell me a little bit about your research, or tell everybody a little bit about your research. Like, what got you into that particular topic that you're researching?
Yeah, so it was an interesting journey, but it was really a journey of getting in touch with myself and what I really wanted to do, because I was bound to write a purely philosophical literary PhD about basically European literature and translations and stuff like that. But I think the closer it got, the less I felt that I was gonna be able to sustain that for 3 years. And when I thought, what was the topic, what was the issue that I talked most about, and that transformed also me and other people the most when I talked about, and which moved me the most, it was really pregnancy and birth. And it was really the question of mind-body connections. And it was also the question of obstetric violence and what is happening and how women are treated. And I was very lucky with both the births of both my children. Because I, as much conflict as my mother and me may have, but she really had self-determined births with both of us, with my brother and I, and she taught me that. And for me, so it was really natural to say, I want this midwife doing these things, and I'm not going to have any of this and that. And I know I'm going to choose the doctor I want, and I know that this doctor is only going to perform a C-section if it's absolutely necessary. So I had this trust coming from my story, but really talking to so many women over the years, I just realized that wasn't a given for most of us. And in the US, it just gets even more. It gets even trickier when it comes to women of color that are torn out of their communities, that are unable to afford their Black midwife, their midwife of color, or Native midwife who performs the practice that they have grown up in. So they enter hospital system, which completely disconnects them from what they have learned and known, and they're looked down on, and they feel shame and guilt. And there's the medical protocol, which seems like it's not, you can't move it at all, especially if it comes to bigger medical institutions. And so they can't afford the births they would need. But often this medical system, if we really talk about it, this medical system kills them. And there is a reason why the mortality rate of Black women and women of color and Black infants and infants of color is exaggeratingly higher than for white people.
Yeah.
So yes.
I think, and I've learned this myself over the years, and it's interesting because I don't have any other experience with other countries, but I will say this about this country, that even with a birth plan, you still have to be really adamant about it. Like, okay, so for many women, they don't even know what a birth plan is. Those that do know what a birth plan is, they don't realize what they can ask for. And even with a birth plan, you can go there and it can go completely out the window depending on the hospital that you go to.
Yes.
Who's in charge. I mean, I remember my last child, I had a midwife. It was a practice though, so they would rotate them out. So I didn't know who I was going to get, which I wasn't really thrilled about. I show up and the person from my practice wasn't, she went home sick. I got a midwife that I never met before in my whole life who loved, she was a lovely person and I appreciated her. So she ended up being wonderful, but there were so many things that I didn't want that they told me I had to absolutely have. Like, I absolutely had to have this. I absolutely had to have that. They wanted to put the monitor on. I'm like, I said, I didn't want the monitor. It was on me anyway. And then when my middle child was born, I remember the nurse was so mean. I actually did have a midwife that I was working with. She was running behind schedule. The nurse that was helping me was so mean. And you know that she was, this is my, even though it's my middle child, it's my first biological child. So I was, even though I was in my 30s and I was a chiropractor and I know all this stuff, I just, you know, you're in that moment, you feel very vulnerable. And so I wasn't saying what I wanted to say. And she got mad because I had to pee and I started to pee and she just shoved a catheter right up. She didn't ask, and ever since then, I've had trouble with my urethra from going forward.
Yeah, and we have to realize that obstetric violence starts exactly there. This can completely change the experience of your birth and what you're able to say, what you're able to express. And as you said, this is the most vulnerable moment. Yet women in this state of exception are not taken serious because they're not in their right minds when we're in that kind of pain or in that kind of position. You're not taken serious. But this is really what my research is about, to enhance this moment as a moment of empowerment.
Yes.
That this vulnerability where you may, you know, lose your mind for a few hours or minutes or even some, you know, for some it's days, you know, that you can embrace this as your personal moment of empowerment.
Yes.
Of your body speaking to you, of your spirit speaking to you. And that doesn't mean it all has to go right. That doesn't mean that, you know, to have a C-section is bad in any case, to get an epidural is bad in any case, you know. Make the choices you want to make, you know, but just know yourself, know what you're really capable of, know what you've been taught. And here, you know, we go about core beliefs, you know, that especially in this country, women are kind of taught that birth is something unbearable, that we just have to shut down with at least an epidural as quick as we can. And you know, this may be the right choice for some women, you know, and I'm saying, you know, if you felt a certain pain already in your past and you don't want to be triggered by this pain anymore, of course, go get an epidural, you know, do whatever you need, but just know yourself, yourself and know what you can do, and enter this world, knowing yourself and knowing the people that surround you in this moment.
Have you heard stories from some of the women that you've been working with and you've been researching, like horrible stories of bullying, the medical professionals bullying, them trying to speak up and not, their voices not being heard? Can you share any of that with us?
Yeah, so I've heard some from stories that other women have told me, but even like within my cycle, I have a friend that has had postnatal preeclampsia, and she said, you know, she had a terrible headache, her legs were swollen after the birth, and she wasn't heard, and she said, I'm in pain, and they said, well, they just didn't take it seriously. So this is one example. She was sent home, and gladly her father-in-law is an OBGYN. He saw her, and the minute he saw her, he said, you go right back, you have to go to the ER. She would have just taken some Advil or something and gone to bed. This can lead to everything until, you know, to death, actually.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
There has, here in Providence, last year in 2019, there was the death of a Black woman, LaShonda Hazard, at the big birthing hospital here at Women and Infants, who had terrible cramps before the birth, and she just wasn't hurt. She wasn't taken seriously. It was an absolutely preventable thing, and she died, and her infant died. It was absolutely preventable, and what happened was that she basically just was not, her pain was not heard. And for me, and I know this may sound theoretical, but for me, having done the research and having done the reading, this goes back to the history of slavery in this country, and how Black people are not heard, are not perceived. And of course, with the recent George Floyd is the best example, the worst example and the best example for saying the pain of the voices of Black people are not heard, are not taken seriously, are not acknowledged. And when it comes to women and parturient women, perinatal, anything around birth, we have a history of OBGYN in this country. So the founding father of modern gynecology here in this country, James Marion Sims, who has several memorials all over this country, he got successful through doing his experiments on slave women without anesthesia. Without anesthesia, because Black women were understood to feel less pain than white women. And this is what modern gynecology in this country is built on. And this is the
I didn't even know that.
And those are the people that we built statues for, because they're our founding fathers of modern medicine or whatever. So this is what I go back to. And I know it sounds radical. And it may not seem logical for a lot of people to say, but this has happened like 150 years ago or whatever. But this is the history, and those are the patterns of history we adapt. And those are the patterns that we have to unlearn.
Yes.
Those are the cords we have to cut. But we can't cut them by shutting them out. We have to cut them by continuously acknowledging them, by continuously seeing how we all reproduce those patterns on a continuous basis.
Yes. I mean, over the years, there's been a lot of change in the way women birth, but you're right, it's still very one-sided as far as color, also as far as a socioeconomic level. And thank you for sharing that, because I wasn't even aware of that history right there. The only way to change the pattern is, number one, to become aware of what's happening, and then decide that this isn't okay anymore. For years, women used to be just, doped up right away. They would be given something, knocked out, and then that's how they would give birth. They would be on their backs because it was so convenient for the doctor to birth the child that way, as opposed to doing what's actually more natural, which is, squatting and getting in certain positions that's comfortable for the woman. And so those are some pieces, but then in addition to the pieces of, individuals of color, and especially if they have insurance that's not as good as some other insurances, and you afford other abilities, and it's enough already. I mean, enough of it all that has to stop. And it should be the most empowering thing ever. Giving birth is the most incredible thing ever. I mean, even with all the pain that you endure, and in the end, when they put that baby on you, it's just the most incredible feeling ever. And every woman has the right to experience it in that way.
Yes.
It's just so joyful.
And also know, even if you go for a C-sections, there's actual institutions that perform something like gentle C-sections, where they still put the baby on you after the birth.
Yes.
They don't take it away, clean it up,
Right.
and you'll get it. So it's there, there's even within that medical institution frame, there's just humongous differences. There's huge differences.
Yes. What's the difference? What have you noticed, especially with comparing Europe to the US, as far as how much more advanced is Europe with regards to all of these challenges or issues?
I think it really depends where you are, but the thing about Europe is that that in many places, or I can speak for Austria and Germany in particular, that just in many places, first of all, there's universal health insurance, which covers midwives. So that's the one thing. But also, of course, with, a lot of, exceptions, but in general, there is definitely, you could say that there is an emphasis on lowering the C-section rate, and in general, the epidural rate is just not as high and as common. I think it's also on the way to change, definitely more going into a US model, depending on where you are. But even with the universal health insurance, you can still usually make a pretty good choice, unless you live in a very remote place in some countryside, but you can still make a pretty good choice as to what kind of birthing situation you choose, and be paid by health insurance. However, there's a lack of education and a lack of taking women seriously, and doing, like, even my sister, my nephew was breech. He's 9 years old by now. My nephew was breech, and she wasn't aware of a lot of things when she first got pregnant, and they basically chose the hospital in accordance to comfort. So they wanted a family room after the birth, and they wanted the hospital to look nicer, but really the hospital did not even say that this was an option at other places, that there are doctors and midwives who can try to give birth to babies that are breech. So, and even to have this as an option, even if she says, no, I'm too scared, this is too risky, and I'm going to do my research. She didn't even have the chance to do the research, to kind of say, maybe this is an option, and I can still give birth in a hospital setting where the doctor tries to give, and I can try to give birth vaginally, and if it doesn't work out, I can still, people are going to be ready to perform a C-section if needed. But she wasn't even given that option or that choice. It was as if no institution outside of the hospital she chose was there or capable or in their right minds.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And she was devastated that birth for her is still a trauma. She had to go to particular therapists that work with her on that traumatic birth experience, and that lack of empowerment she felt. And she said she felt completely stripped of any agency when she was tied up in that C-section scenario. And she felt so stupid and guilty and shameful for not knowing that she could have just chosen another place, another hospital, and then she could have chosen a midwife that tried this with her. But it wasn't her fault.
Right.
It's not her fault for saying, I want to choose a hospital. That those are valid thoughts if you don't know your way around these things. And I understand, there's no shame and no guilt.
That's right.
And that is the main thing. It is also the main thing that I do with women when I work with them, to strip them of all this guilt and that shame that is imposed on them, and to take every voice of them, even if they consider it themselves whiny and difficult and full of hormones and whatever, to take all of those things serious and listen to them and see what that tells us about their needs and wants and their desires.
That's fantastic. That's wonderful. And you brought up a really good point, because we do hear that a lot as women in general, whether we're pregnant women or not, that when it comes to the hormones, and if we're emotional or if we're like whiny, that it's not legitimate, let's say. It's hormones talking. And okay, so if we could say, yeah, it is hormones talking, but doesn't mean that we're insane. It doesn't mean that we don't know what we're talking about. If we want something, we have the right to ask for it. And if someone like makes you feel smaller with you asking for what you're asking for, then you have the right to go to somebody else and say, you're not, I need somebody else. I need somebody else. Yeah. Because you would think that some of these like really big hospitals, I'm gonna not name one, but in Connecticut, there's a very big hospital here in Connecticut. You would think because they're so big and they would know more and they would, they have all this advanced medicine, but they have the advanced stuff in case there was a problem. But when it comes to natural stuff, a lot of those hospitals fail big time because they don't want to be in that part of it. They want to be in the part that the emergency medical side of it, which I get, and there's a purpose for them, and they're wonderful when there is a medical emergency, especially with childbirth. But when you have these hospitals who just refuse to let the women do things so naturally, which women have been doing for thousands of years, yes, giving birth, and all of a sudden we don't know. Like, we don't know as women, we don't know what we're doing. We don't know how this, like, in other words, we have no idea how all these people came about these years, because before all these, the medical profession came in and did this, it was just a, it was just a fluke. Like, all these people were born and survived. It's just, yeah. Especially that inequality of, depending on your background, depending on, it's color, it's socioeconomics, it's education level, it's also too sometimes society, the mother did it this way, and the daughter now is getting ready to give birth, and she doesn't know to ask questions, and the mother says, I did it this way, you could do it that way too, but I heard about this. I mean, we could go on and on. We can talk about breastfeeding, and I mean, that's the same thing. It's like, for years it was a lost thing, and then women started to question, and there's still people that are like, well, why would you breastfeed? That's what they're there for. That's why you breastfeed. Yeah. That's what they're there for. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that what you just said is the most important thing, is for women to be able now, and for, that was that was a bad thing in the past, that women weren't able to choose their tribe. They just had their tribe, but women today should really be able to choose their tribe. And I'm not saying, I can't replace that tribe as a white woman. I can't, I also have to acknowledge, I can't replace the tribe of a woman that grew up in an African-American community.
Yes.
And she needs that, and she wants that.
Yes.
And that is part of that empowerment, to say you're allowed to choose your tribe in that situation. Yeah. And how can we make it happen?
Yeah, the support system, and you're absolutely right. It has to be, listen, it's one thing, it's women to women, but then you also have to be more specific. And I'll give you an example of something that happened recently, or that I experienced recently, and it had nothing to do with childbirth, but it was a hospital situation where my mother-in-law was in the hospital, and she does not speak a lot of English, and she it was amazing to me that an inner city hospital in an area that's predominantly Hispanic, so few medical personnel that speak Spanish. Yeah. And so what was happening, they didn't know what she wanted, and they weren't providing her with the proper care. And she ended up getting brought to a different floor, and her doctor was actually Hispanic. And it was so nice to sit in the room and talk to him. And then he was speaking directly to her, and then understood that it was lost in translation, because what she was saying, and then what the non-Spanish speaking staff was understanding, they weren't understanding. He got a glimpse of that. And I was so happy, because he knew, and he walked up to her and he put his hand on her shoulder, and he was rubbing her shoulder, which I thought was just beautiful, because you don't see that a lot with doctors. And he was explaining to her in Spanish, and she was explaining to him what she felt like. And he looked up at us, and he's like, oh my God, she doesn't understand. He's like, she's telling everybody she doesn't want something, and they're following suit, saying, well, that's what the patient said, she didn't want it, but she didn't understand what they were telling her she needed. And so he got it. And that made me think right then and there, just that piece alone, how often people are just misunderstood because there's a language barrier, or there's a cultural barrier, or there's, but having, and I left there thinking, we need more staff, like medical personnel, and maybe not even just like holistic personnel that speak multiple languages, that can communicate properly, that know, tell these individuals too, you have rights. You can say this, you can ask these questions, don't make assumptions, don't think they all know. And especially when it comes to women giving birth, like I said with that earlier, that vulnerabilities, we want to trust in the process, because we want to know that they're taking care of us and the baby, that there's the best there, not realizing that they're taking care of the baby and the mom, but in their way, not really realizing that you do have other choices, and you can ask, and you have the right to ask, So,
and it's not about blaming, and also it's not about blaming any medical staff or the doctors, because they're infused in this system.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we just have to understand that a specific medical protocol just disables relationship, personal connections, personal needs, desires. So, and that's the gap we have to look at and work on and see, what is this doing? Because it's not just disempowering to the women, it's also disempowering to the doctors and the midwives.
Correct. I agree with you. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
go
ahead.
Sorry. And what you said earlier, I wanted just to pick up on what you said, about women being emotional and stuff like that. And we have to also realize that comes, speaking, from my research also, this comes from a specific male, Eurocentric, white history that we are brought up in. And the word what is the word that embraces all of that is hysteria. And hysteria is a male invention. It's a male invention. It doesn't even exist. Hysteria is actually, it comes from the Greek word uterus.
Oh my God.
Yes. So we have to, when it comes to people saying, oh, this is sentimental, mushy, emotional, hormonal, whatever, we have to realize that this kind of logic of judging what is there and judging women's emotional expressions is coming from a very male, stagnant background.
Yeah, good. That's a very good point. Thank you for bringing that up. I do want to ask you, so you're so passionate about this, like this is just, and I love it. I love how you have embraced this, having the, originally we're looking to go into a entirely different element of the PhD research, and then switching to this. The passion that you show and the drive that you have behind that, is that linked to, you said you've had a traumatic past. So how do you believe that, how has your past created your present? Like your experiences in your past brought you to where you are today, to the person that you are, and the research that you're doing?
My traumatic past. So I really, we've talked about this before, of course, that
you don't have to details,
no.
What do you feel?
First of all, traumatic past, when we talk about this, we really talk about like PTSD, complex trauma, like structural abuse that I've gone through in my childhood. And I always, for a long time, even though I really embraced self-healing very early on, or self-care, I still ran through my fair share of self-harm and self-sabotage for a while. But I think after I really made self-care a priority for myself, it also limited the tolerance for doing things that are not connected to your true calling. So the more I think I can speak from my perspective, but I've seen it in so many other people as well. The more you embrace this past as as an asset, as a strength, you know, as painful as it is. And I've really gone through not just through hell, but also through the point of saying, I really hate that I have this past. I really resent myself for coming with this baggage, you know, and I see other people just being so free, and here I'm stuck within myself and I can't move. And I was, you know how it is when you're depressed, you know, you're just stuck and you can't move, and you're like, what do I do with myself? But you know, after I really inched my way forward, and that's what I always say to people when they're stuck, you know, what's the smallest possible step you can take right now?
Forward, right.
Even if this step is, I want to have sour cream and onion chips, whatever it is, you know, as little as what's the smallest possible step. But after I really embrace this, and this is what I still do also now with the work and with my kids at home, is that I really prioritize self-care over everything at all. I don't start any work if I feel a level of stress. If I feel a certain level of stress or anxiety or terror, I immediately check in with myself and see what I can do. But the more I do this, the less tolerant I am of doing stuff for work that are disconnected from myself.
Yeah, because you become more self-aware. So you know what really means a lot to you, and what you feel is just not serving you anymore.
Yeah. So that's what I'm said. I said I couldn't, I at some point I knew I couldn't have pulled off a purely theoretical, philosophical, literary PhD. I literally couldn't have pulled it off. There was so much resistance of my healing self, of my system, that was like in transformation, and said, you know, this is the you know, wrong way. You know, like this is
but
not
that's beautiful.
work.
That's beautiful that you not only were aware of it, but you honored it. Like you felt it, and it was because you know, because you're training to be a life coach, and you know this, that there's so many people that they'll feel it and they still will go down the path because there's so many reasons for it. And they will keep going, and they'll be miserable, and then they get to the end and they're still miserable. But you had the insight, you had enough to know of how you felt to say, I have to be doing this. And I can only imagine the fact that with the insight that you have gained over the years from your experiences, have really added dimensions to what you're working on now, as far as your research is concerned now, right? Has it brought you more empathy, more compassion than you even imagined that you were capable of?
There's definitely this level of insight that is if you let this happen, if you get in touch with this, it's pretty incredible what this can also do if you let it express, you let this express, and how much flow you can really create by just listening to that side and listening to that intuition and letting this, you know, really come out. And I can't even say, you know, this is, you know, so, you know, good for, you know, so I was just so good at this, you know, because it's just a natural process. And it's also a process that involves accepting a lot of help, a lot of support, and really, you know, also realizing I can't do this by myself. You know, I don't want to do this by myself, even though community meant for such a long time for me pain and suffering and not being safe. I had to, you know, relearn this and say, okay, but you know, with this sort of healing, you can actually create a tribe and a community that means the opposite.
Yes, and I'm so glad that you said that, because that's true. So it's just as if anybody's ever experiencing trauma or difficulties or challenges, if you, whatever community you're in at that moment in time does not mean that's the only community that's out there. It's once you decide that this doesn't serve me any longer and I cannot do it this way any longer, there's got to be more out there, that gives you the ability to see beyond. And it takes one question, like one reaching out to one person to say, I need help, I need this, and they can guide you into that direction. So I love that. I love that you said that community sort of failed you in the beginning, but now you've just redirected yourself and realized, oh my gosh, there's more communities out there. There's other people out there that are like me and or like how I want to be, and are supportive in that. They're supporting me getting to be that person.
Yeah, and also, yes, and also learn that fighting for yourself and not needing anyone and constantly pushing other people away and not allowing yourself to be vulnerable and be weak, you know. And of course, you know, speaking with the great Brené Brown, you know, the courage, this is not what defines courage, you know. Right. Courage, accepting help, accepting vulnerability, accepting a tribe, accepting also to be hurt at times, and to going through that pain and accepting that pain is what defines courage.
Yes. Yeah. She's also very clear about that. You want to be vulnerable for the people that are worthy enough to hear your vulnerability or to know your vulnerability too.
Yes.
That's the thing that you have to be very careful with anybody. Anybody who's even along the line of your research that, yes, you know, you want to be strong, you want to reach out, you want to let people know that you need help, but you also have to be very self-aware of those that are worthy to hear it, because if they're not, they will always manipulate you into a situation that you don't really want to be in. Mm. And I absolutely agree with, I've experienced that times in my life. And that, but once you become clear and say, no, this is what I want this. And then somebody tries to tell you otherwise, then you know who to trust. And it is so, I don't know, what do you think? Like, have you felt that it was like a breath of fresh air for you to find your community and let yourself be vulnerable, be open? And then how much growth did you have with that versus the other community?
It's not even, it's like a different life. It's really like a different life. And to know I can, as you said, you know, it's not like I'm going out and saying, you know, here I am with all my vulnerability and my past and my trauma, you know. Of course, you know, this is limited to people I trust, you know, of course, you know. But to know you can trust your radar and your intuition on this, and ease yourself into this and let go into this and breathe into this and let yourself fall into this is like it's like a different life. Seriously, I mean, that there was definitely a part in my life when I thought the whole world is bad and the whole world is against me. Yeah. The whole world is gonna be a bad place for sure. Like that was like not even like another, like that was a hard fact for me.
Yeah.
From what I've learned.
Yeah. Well, it's easy to
because that trust was violated so much in my most intimate circle of my family that that I felt, you know, that, you know, if this is the base of everything, then, you know, just go to hell, you know.
Yeah. Understandably so. I mean, there's so many, you know what, I mean, we're inundated with it. We see it on TV. Movies all portray this. It's always this negative, violent, you know, awful place. And it's just like the expression, to keep it on a lighter side, the expression like misery loves company.
Yeah.
Yes, it's true. But you know what? Happiness loves company too. And it's once you decide like, okay, this can't be all there is. This can't be this. I'm going to be happy and I'm going to live my life and I'm going to take my awful stuff that happened to me in my past and learn from it and change. And then all of a sudden these people pop out of the woodwork that you're like, oh my God, you're a beautiful person and you're a nice person and you're a sweet person and you had that horrible background and that happened to you. And then all of a sudden they come out and they give you strength. And I think the beautiful part about this is because this is what happens with transformation. As you transform your life, you cannot keep shut and keep it to yourself. So as you're transforming all the women that you are researching. because anything you gain, any insight you gain, any new knowledge that you learn, you share it. Whether it's part of research or not, I would imagine you probably can't stay shut. It's just like, listen, you need to know this, you need to hear this, and you can do with what you want with it. I mean, do you find yourself doing that when you're working with some of these women?
Yes, it's definitely also sometimes a challenge to not impose it, you know.
Right.
I think my connection is just a little bad.
Yeah, there we go.
Right now. But to not impose myself, and to kind of really see what's coming from them, and my truth may not be their truth.
Right.
And I think we lost connection again just now.
Oh, no, I think we're still there.
Yeah.
There we go.
So this is, yeah. Okay.
Towards the end,
Yeah,
and
so
it's like getting
this
like
is
that.
definitely like, yeah, but this is definitely, and I think you know that not say that, you know, not shouting out and kind of being a mom also in that sense, and saying, yeah, I know what's best for you, you know. That's not what this work is about, of course.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh no, and I don't mean it that way. I mean it more like, you know, breadcrumbs. You know, I say that a lot with clients, is that, you know, you share what you learn, and let them decide what they want to do with that information. Because again,
Yes.
like your research is really especially specific on the fact that because women of color are not getting equal to white women, and a lot of it does have to do with information. It's you know, understanding, and so we give information so that, and they can still decide in the end what they want to do, but it's nice to have it though, you know, and to know that they're worth it, and to know that they can ask questions. And I know you enough to know that I couldn't even imagine you staying shut on some of that, because it's just so, it's like, and you know that, but when you meet somebody who has no idea, like they didn't even know they can ask a question, they didn't even know that was an option, and you're on the other side going, how did you not know? Well, I mean, you know, because you research it, but in the past it was like, how do you not know that? Because I've known this. How long have I known this was passed down, or I read it or whatever, but to just provide information where people are just like, wow.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and also really, so for what I also do, especially with Black women and women of color, first of all, I don't ask for money from them. That is how I'm giving back. But not just that, I also don't want to, because I don't want to take business from Black coaches and Black doulas or Black midwives. So the first thing I do when I work with Black women or women of color is to find a way into the community and what they need, and to maybe also transfer them to someone from their community. You know, because there's, you know, as much as insight as I have through my research, there's some things that I can't access.
Right, exactly.
And I constantly also have to remind myself of the limit that I have there.
And that's beautiful. That's beautiful for you to recognize that, really, truly, because it's very honoring, and it's very respectful, because it's hard for us to ever say that, you know, we can't understand something. We'd like to think that we understand everything and we know how a person feels, but the reality is we truly don't. We don't know. And to pass it on, to pass the individual onto somebody that you feel would be able to benefit them even greater, is just fabulous. And that speaks volumes too of who you are. As a human, you know, the fact that you recognize that, and that you honor that, and that you push forward with that. Not saying that if the person says, no, I really want to work with you, that's, you know, one thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. I really love that.
Yeah. Yeah, because, all of us, we come with our, and as we said, our history has been our teacher also, and to who we are and what we have to give, and my trauma is part of also what I can give and what I can offer. And we've had, and you actually helped me embrace this a lot more in the work we did together. But it also means I don't, I have a history in this country of not being here with a green card or as a permanent resident. So that's definitely a difference here to be here on visa. But yet I have, and, people of course immediately talk differently with you if they hear you have an accent, so I'm, even though people may think I'm American, as soon as they talk to me very quickly here, okay, she's not. And that makes a difference. However, I was never the victim, or rarely, let's say, but not on a long-term level. I was not the victim of structural racism. I was not the victim of having this internalized in your system of how you will be approached just walking down the street, walking into the post office, of doing your grocery shopping, of how your kids are going to be approached, of the fear Black parents have for their children on a daily basis. All of that I don't know.
Yeah, I don't have either.
I know about, and that's where, I'm also critical of the word empathy in that sense, because there's a certain empathy, you can't have for that at a certain compassionate level. You can't have, because you haven't experienced
you didn't experience it, right?
You haven't experienced it. And this is where I say, if women come with these deep traumas of this, I can still, do EFT tapping and we can talk about it. But I think, but that's where I'm saying, this is my limit. And I that's where I'm saying, I'm so glad to have a community of Black women beyond that is ready to embrace these women in their community. And yeah,
I think that's beautiful. I think that is absolutely beautiful what you just said. And I was going to say to you that my last question was, what insight would you like to leave the viewers with? And that was beautiful right there. But I mean, do you want to add anything else to that about, just even the title, liberating your highest expression? Why is it so important for us to embrace our authentic selves?
Why is it so important? Because of the liberation of it, because it will liberate you, because you will get close to yourself. You will get close to the people that you truly want to have in your life and that want to be with you. The gentle insistence, the word insistence is very important for me. And this is what I'm also going to call my podcast, because actually Gertrude Stein made a difference between repetition and insistence. And for me, this is also what birth is, even though our contractions may be repetitive, but one contraction is never like the other. And this is the same as in life, our breath is not repeating itself. It's actually insisting, because it's never the same. It's ever changing and ever evolving. And yeah, this is probably the last thing I would like to share.
That was spectacular. Well, when you get your podcast going, let me know so I could let my tribe know so that everyone could jump on for you.
Yeah.
And
I hope maybe by the time this gets aired, hopefully I'm just planning the first 5 episodes, and I hope maybe by the time this interview gets aired,
it'll be right around that time. Oh, perfect.
Hopefully.
Perfect. Yeah, good. And Mirjam, it was such a pleasure to have you on. It's always a pleasure to speak to you anyway. You're just
likewise
adorable. I love your energy and your insights and your I'm just happy that you are doing what you're doing, the research that you're doing. And yes, thank you so much for taking the time with us.
No, thank you.
And I will give Miriam's information to all the viewers. And once she gets the podcast going, I definitely encourage you to get on and support her. And if you have any questions for her on any of her research, or if you know, anything, how would anybody get in touch with you? Is there an email, or are you on Instagram or something like that they can?
Yes, I have a Facebook, and we'll definitely have a Facebook page soon, and there will be a link to my homepage. I'm actually going to launch my homepage soon as well. It's going to be mirjampaninski.com, and anyone can also book a free sample session with both the coaching and EFT, and I'd be happy to work with anyone, of course. And
wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Great. Well, Mirjam, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. And everybody, thanks for coming on this week. And, you know, just remember, these sessions are for you to learn about other people, but to really learn about yourself and understand your greatness and step into it and be authentic. And that is why I always end every week the same way with: remember, be you, be real, and be extraordinary. Thanks so much for coming on, and take care. See you next week.
Thank you.